Okay, so welcome to the 1010 class lecture meeting number 6. And this is the lecture on persuasive writing. We're going to cover several things if you're kind of wanting to draw a schemata on your notes before we start. I'm going to first talk a little bit about form and skeleton guide stuff, just to make sure we're all good to go there. Then we're going to talk about 3 different types of writing: exposition, editorial writing, and then finally persuasion. Persuasion is where we'll spend the majority of our evening, obviously. And then we'll talk a little bit about the key elements of persuasion, and then finally we'll finish with some MLA style book stuff. Okay? So let's start first of all by talking about page 8 of that packet in regards to skeleton guide. All right? Now, just to remind, every prof has a different kind of way that he or she likes to do this thing of setting up papers. But page 8 is the kind of basic skeleton guide, and so it's kind of important that that's kind of where we start, all right? When you're talking skeleton guide, you're talking about the form the paper needs to look like on the printed page, okay? Notice you've got some login information, followed then by your 2 titles. Now your titles are creative title first, followed by an academic title. That academic title sits right underneath in parentheses, an analysis of, a discussion of, a treatment of, and it gives me the information that I need. Now in the top right corner where you put your login information, that's where you put the chapter designation, chapter 4 paper, chapter 5 paper. Also put a note to yourself that in that login information, you should be putting what the kind of paper is, proposing a solution, arguable thesis, etc. Just so that it's easy for me to see what kind of paper you're supposed to be writing. Then I look at your creative title, which can be anything that you want it to be, right? Interracial, adoption, black or white, question mark. That's a creative title. But underneath, I'm going to see an academic title that will give me a specific to let me know what your thesis is. An analysis of the values and detriments of interracial adoption. See, and that tells me exactly what it is that I'm looking at for a paper. Then everything's driven by paragraphing. The first paragraph in a traditional 5-paragraph essay, which is kind of the scale work that we learn in composition before we grow these essays. Obviously, they get longer than 5 paragraphs. First paragraph, though, is our intro paragraph. And there I'm going to get basic information, and that last sentence of that first paragraph needs to be that clearly stated thesis. Stay away from formulating your thesis with the words, "in this essay I will." Any of that kind of formulations, okay? Then, after that, I'm going to see body development in the 3 points of validation. That first sentence of each one of those paragraphs is my topic sentence, and in that topic sentence, I need to be able to know exactly how you're validating your thesis, all right? An easy way to do this is to cut and paste those thesis 3 topic sentences, so 4 sentences on a sheet of paper. That ought to be a schemata or an outline of what your paper is about. If people read that and they don't know that you're writing on interracial adoption, then you got a problem. Your paper is really flailing. So those sentences matter the most. In each one of the body paragraphs, then, you want to make sure that you're involved in some kind of citation, referencing. We'll have more to say about that here in a little bit. But you want to make sure that you're involved in the referencing project, okay? And you're following the MLA style book when you do it. Finally, the 5th paragraph is the conclusion paragraph, where we restate thesis and summarize primary points of validation. Okay? Questions about any of that? That's fairly standard protocol. It's pretty much the form that you learned when you were in high school, and we just kind of continue it now at the university level, okay? There's kind of 3 types of writing. Exposition, and I think that it makes sense that you learn how to use these terms, right? Exposition or expositional writing, you can kind of see where the word comes from. It comes from the word to expose. That is to say, to show, okay? Exposition is any kind of writing that does not have an opinion behind it, all right? So, for example, if you're doing a lab in biology and all you have to do is report information as it happened, that's exposition. If you're writing in a history class about information from a document, for example, you're summarizing the Declaration of Independence, that's exposition. okay? And we do some exposition in the academic community. A lot of profs use exposition writing as a way to find out if you read the material, right? So you read chapter 7 of the psychology text and you have to write a summary. That's exposition. You don't have to decide whether you like or dislike Freud's theory of psychoanalysis. All you do is just present what it says in chapter 7 in the psych book about Freud's theory, okay? So that's exposition. The second kind of writing we do very, very rarely within the academic community, and this is what we call editorial writing. Editorial writing is what we do when we write for the Daily White. You always see these letters to the editor, or somebody's torqued off about something that's happening at the golf course, and they sit down and they start writing all about it, and they're really torqued off. That's called editorial writing, okay? Now, sometimes that's called opinion writing, okay? But here's the thing. We don't want to confuse editorial or opinion writing with persuasive writing. They are two different, fundamentally different things. And that's the third kind of writing, is persuasive writing or arguable thesis writing, okay? Normally, we just abbreviate it to persuasive writing, all right? Now, what is persuasive writing? Let's define that one, okay? Here's our problem. When we are writing to editorialize, we just want to present our ideas. People who agree with our idea, yeah, something's bad out at the golf course, I agree, hurrah, we've got those people agreeing with us. The people who don't agree with us, quite frankly, we could care less about. They're morons because they don't agree with us anyway. See how that works, okay? So, for example, if I write on gun control and all I ever say in gun control, and I'm against gun control, but I write about how anybody that wants to try to take away guns or control guns are all complete moronic idiots, I'm now writing an editorial writing. I'm not writing persuasion. Got me? Because here's the challenge of persuasive writing. If I'm having a conversation, let's say, for example, with Barker, and I torque her off, she gets up and walks out the room. And I go, whoa, I just torqued Barker off. This could never happen. But I'm like, whoa, I torqued her off. So I, go down the hall. And she's, no, I'm not talking. You're a total jerk. And I'm like, wait, you think I just said this, but I didn't. You did say that. And I go, no, that's not what I said. What I said was this, and you misunderstood me. She goes, oh, so you weren't saying that? And I go, no, that's not what I was saying. See, we can do that when we discourse, when we talk. But if I'm writing something, and Bark all of a sudden disagrees with me, and she stops reading and sets the paper down until somebody can invent talking paper that says, hey, pick me back up. Keep reading, I'll explain it. Until we invent paper like that, let's say it now out loud for your notes. The minute the reader stops reading, we're no longer writing persuasion. That is a key thing, what I just said. The minute the reader stops reading, we're finished with persuasion. We're now writing editorial material. Okay? So the key in persuasive writing involves at least 3 things. 1, the consideration of the acrimonious audience. The consideration of the acrimonious audience. Acrid. Pleasant or not pleasant? If a drink is acrid, is it a nice tasting drink or is it yucky? Right. So acrimonious audience, an audience that agrees with you or disagrees with you? Disagrees with you. So you have to assume the acrimonious audience. Assume the acrimonious audience. In other words, when you write to persuade, you have to always assume that the one reading your paper isn't going to agree with you. Now, if somebody agrees with you, that's fine. Hurrah. But that's not how you write one of these papers. Notice how that's different from an editorial. I write an editorial assuming everyone agrees with me, and if they don't, they're a bunch of morons. Right? But when I write to persuade, I have to assume that somebody who is not in favor of my position is going to be the one reading, which involves then a fundamental premise. If I'm considering the acrimonious audience, my chief goal is to keep the reader reading, right? The reader can't stop reading. Once the reader stops reading, then my rhetorical purpose, rhetoric, R-H-E-T-O-R-I-C-A-L, rhetorical, my rhetorical purpose, my intention and persuasion is to keep the reader reading. Why? Well, let's say it out loud. We do not write persuasion to change people's minds. Right? No. Gun control is what should never happen, and so I'm going to write this essay, and then there will be no more concern about gun control. See, this isn't how it works. People hold very strong opinions, very deeply held opinions. You're not going to write a paper that changes people's minds so easy. We are not writing to change people's minds. We are rather writing a different C word. We are writing to challenge people's opinions. The best you can hope for from the acrimonious audience reader, the best you can hope for is that the audience will finish your paper and say, I guess I haven't thought about it from that perspective. That's the best you can hope for. It's not that the acrimonious reader is going to finish your paper and go, oh, I now see the light and I completely agree with your opinion and I'm going to jettison my old opinion. Very rarely does that kind of thing happen. Mature readers don't change their minds so easy, okay? So our goal, first and foremost, keep the reader reading by consideration of the acrimonious audience. To do that, we have two things that we really focus on to kind of help us to engage the acrimonious reader, okay, the reader who won't agree with us. The first is what we call conceding a point. Conceding a point. Now, if you're in a ball club and you're losing big time and you decide to concede the game, what does that mean? It means the ball club does what? That's losing. If it decides to concede the game, what does that mean? It means it gives up. It's like, dude, okay, I'm done. We just quit, okay? Conceding a point in rhetoric means the following. I say something that I know the acrimonious audience is going to agree with. I say something that I know the acrimonious reader will agree with. And then I immediately follow that statement with the word but or the word however. The classic example of this that I always like to use is, of course, poor boys at Worland High School who are stupid as posts, who just don't get it, right? So when the girlfriend comes to them and says, we've been dating for some time, yeah, but I think it's time we should be friends. Wham! See how that works? Conceding a point, you say something that the audience is going to, acrimonious reader is going to agree with. We've been dating for a long time. Yeah. Boys are too stupid to realize this is the setup line too, and now I think it's time we call it goodbye. You see, and the boy's just like, whoa, I didn't see that aluminum bat coming at my face, but that's because boys are dumb. Right?
Right.
You didn't have to agree so fast, Ms.
Sorry.
Rucker, okay?
I can agree.
So the first challenge is, well, you guys knew this from the time you were really young. You want something from your ma. Hey, ma, you're looking really nice tonight. And she says the answer is no. See, she understands early formations of this rhetorical way of reasoning. You're saying, you're giving me a compliment so you can set me up for something. That's kind of what conceding a point is. This is political writing. Let's make sure we understand this is political writing. This is rhetorical writing. We are saying something with which the acrimonious audience reader will agree so that we can then say something about which the acrimonious audience might not agree. Okay, that's why we use the word but. Number two, we not only concede a point when we write to keep the reader reading. Number two, we are going to do what we call consideration of the historical precedent. Consideration of the historical precedent. Now, if you're in court of law and the judge asks the lawyer about a case, is there a precedent in this case? What does that mean? Is there anything that happened in the past that would have any bearing on this case? The consideration of the historical precedent means research. This is one of the most important things about a 1010 class. I can always lecture to a group of freshmen to college or even graduate level students at the college level. I can always find my freshmen very, very quickly. All I have to do is ask the question open-ended, what's the best form of government? Freshmen will always jump right up. The best form of government is democracy because I believe in the United States of America. Right? That's a freshman for you. Jumps right into it. A senior in college will usually respond by saying, well, that's a very intriguing question. What's the best form of government? I suppose it all depends on what your definition of best is and what your definition of form of government is and even what you mean by government. And we can begin anywhere you'd like to begin. We can begin with early Platonic thought if you want to, or Aristotelian thought in regards to what's the best form of government. We can work all the way up through the writings of Churchill, who said democracy is the worst form of government with the exception of all the other ones on the planet. So, I mean, that's Churchill's, tipping of his hat to democracy. In other words, a mature student understands about any arguable thesis, there's always two sides. There's always research on both sides. So the mature or the informed reader will consider historically what has already been said. Remember when I gave that lecture on the academic community and I said that Lockhart was working as a Stanford biologist, medical prof, and when she discovered a potential cure of a strain of cancer, she wrote a paper? Remember? One of the first things she would do in that paper, even though she's the expert in the field, even though she's one of the top guns in the whole field of cancer research, one of the first things she does is to quote, cite research from her colleagues. Now, why would she do that? If she's the gun, why would she need to quote or cite from other places? Well, again, it shows that you are fair-minded and balanced. You're willing to take opinions of both sides. In other words, if I'm writing against gun control, I'm going to find lots of research in favor of gun control. I'm not just going to research my side of the thesis. That's, by the way, the paper we just finished with for this evening, right? Where you realize there's both sides to an opinion, okay? Even a strongly held opinion, that's the case, all right? So as I'm writing, I want to make sure that I show my reader I've given some thought to both sides of this argument, and I'm going to present information in my paper on both sides. That's really crucial, what I just said. So the acrimonious reader will realize that you as a writer are at least trying to be fair and balanced, to use the language of a certain TV station that tries to be fair and balanced, or so it says. Fair and balanced meaning that we try to present both sides of an opinion, right? To show that we are not completely biased one way or the other. I used to give this assignment in the 1010 class. My students hated it. I said, your job is to write on the thesis, war is good. Your audience is a bunch of peace activists that are chained to a chain link fence in Nevada outside of a testing site. Ready, go. That's who you have to write your paper for. And your thesis is war is good. Drove them nuts. How in heaven's name are you even going to, you're not even going to get 5 lines into this essay before any one of those readers will stop reading because they completely disagree with the thesis. How to go about doing it. My suggestion is the following. Opening lines of this essay. War is terrible. Horrific. Families are destroyed. Economies ruined. Nations have been completely demolished through the event of war. War is terrible. However, sometimes history seems to suggest war is necessary. Notice what that little however did, right? Our peace activists were with us right up to the however. War is terrible, right? Of course, they hate war, right? The however, notice I didn't say war is good. I said sometimes it's possible that war might be necessary. What are you going to do with a Hitler? You just going to let him keep gassing innocent people? Well, what if he doesn't quit? Might be the only thing to do, try to put a bullet in his head. That's called war. And even though it might not be what we would want, it might be notice I changed the language to necessary. That's what we mean by political writing. So as you begin to write your papers, you want to be more conscious of trying to consider the historical precedent. That's research. And that's why it's so important that we follow a style book. Now let's talk for the last few minutes about that. Go ahead and look in your Axelrod Cooper starting on 738. Now these are pages that you will be reading coming, but I'm already setting you up for it, okay? Notice on 738 and following, you've got several different kinds of things that will be of importance for us, all right? We're going to be here in a second as we talk about kind of the way we put these papers together, okay? So here we go. I'm going to kind of flow this for you on the whiteboard, and hopefully this will make sense. We're going to start on 738. I'll be there in a few minutes. I'm not ready for it yet, but at least if you have your hymnal open, you're kind of ready. Okay, first of all, we start with an idea which translates into a thesis, correct? This thesis has to be arguable, which means there are two sides, correct? Right? From here, the next thing that we will do is we will then begin the process of research. Okay? Research. Where we will then go and do research on both sides of the topic. Okay? Now this research will ultimately provide us with a thesis, and then we're going to do an outline, which will allow us to create points of validation. And when we're working in a traditional class like a 10-10 class, we're always looking for at least 3 of them. And how we decide to order those 3 will be important. For example, do we move from the strongest argument to the weakest argument? Or do we work from the weakest argument to the strongest argument? Most of the time, rhetorically speaking, we do the latter, right? We start with an argument that an acrimonious reader would probably go, well, yeah, I can see your point, but I can argue against that, so I'm going to keep reading. Get to the last final argument, and maybe that is a knockdown argument or a really challenging argument to the reader, okay? Now, as we begin the process of actually writing our paper, there's 2 things we must think about. In text, this has to do with citation, okay, issues, all right? In text citation, referencing, and then what we will call end texts, or what we'll call a works cited page, all right? A works cited page. So the question for us as we're writing these papers is not how many sources do I have to use, but rather how many sources do I get to use? Because the more source work that I do, the more quoting that I do in the paper, the stronger the paper is going to be perceived by an acrimonious reader. Make sense? Again, on both sides of the issue, not just the side that I'm trying to argue for. Make sense? Okay. And a prof sits down to read these papers playing an intellectual game, not really wanting to see whether he or she can be convinced by your argument, as much as asking a simple question: does the reader present well both sides as the reader seeks to make an argument for one side or the other? In other words, using of the research. Okay? Inside of our text, we are then quoting our material as we're writing. Now, if we provide information from another source without quoting and proper attribution to attribute or to say where it's from, that's the P word. What do we call that? Plagiarism. Major no-no. We don't want to do that, okay? That gets us in serious hot water with university officials. But we want to cite, we want to quote and tell where we got information from. There's kind of 2 ways we'll do that. There could be direct quoting. This is what we would call a word-for-word quoting, correct? And I'm going to know that because that information is going to be a quotation mark, right? We can do indirect quoting. We don't have to use a quotation mark. We just simply will summarize or paraphrase, right? In other words, we put it in our own words, okay? Make sense? Even though we put it in our own words, though, we have to say where we got it from, okay? This attribution or acknowledging sources involves what we call a style book. Style book just simply means the rules of how we do this quoting thing. There are 2 popular style books at the university. The first is called the APA style book, the American Psychological Association. Remember, psychology starts with a P,
That's what I'm doing,
right? The APA style book. The second style book is called the MLA style book, okay? Now, all these style books mean, again, this just simply means the rules of how you present your information. That's all it means, okay? Early on in any class, one of the first questions you always want to ask a history prof, a biology prof, or whatever is, what style book would you like for us to use? The APA, the MLA, both are treated in the Axelrod Cooper book. I'll get to it in a second, okay? The key is we want to make sure in text, when we quote, that we always have the author's name associated with whatever information that we're presenting. We're never going to put an HTTP URL web address. We won't do any of that because it's distracting. It's long and it's, of course, distracting. We always have an author's name. Dude, what if I'm presenting information without an author's name? Way wrong answer. Unless you're presenting from some kind of an official site like NASA or something like that, you always want to make sure you have an author's name associated with whatever it is you're presenting. Okay? Again, in text. Now, end text, a works cited page, right? Here, you're going to list in alphabetical order, last name first, all of the information as you attributed it inside of the body of your paper. So in other words, here, you're going to list where the info came from, okay? Beginning with the author's name. And the theory here is, if the prof is reading your paper on the 3 causes of the American Civil War, and there's a quote in there from Dr. Cohen, then the prof ought to be able to go from Dr. Cohen, the quote here, to Dr. Cohen on the reference page, on the works cited page, to be able to go directly to where the quote comes from. You ought to be able to give enough information on that works cited page so that the instructor can run the material down if he or she wishes. Make sense? Well, let's take a look at chapter 22, starting on 738. Notice we begin with using sources and the whole issue of quotations, and on page 741, integrating quotations into the body of the paper, okay? Then, introducing quotations, and punctuating within quotations. Look on page 743. Put a star there in your notes for 743. This is crucial because you want to make sure that you punctuate correctly and you avoid grammatical issues 744, 745, and 746. Finally, 747. This is a huge page. You want to write it down in your notes. You are acknowledging sources. On 748, you are avoiding plagiarism. 749, you have different style books or documentation styles. Do you see them down there at the bottom of the page? You'll see several of them listed there, okay? And typically within different disciplines, we have different kind of style books. The 2, again, most popular, the APA style book, the MLA style book. Normally, the APA style book is for science, biology, math, that kind of thing. The MLA for your humanities classes, like literature. A history prof can go either way. Sometimes the history prof will go MLA, sometimes the history prof will go APA. Doesn't matter because you've got both kinds of style books here in your book. Now we, in our class, as our requirement for Northwest College and the University of Wyoming, we must use the MLA style book. However, I want you to at least be conversant with what the APA style book is. Do you notice that all of a sudden, starting on page 750, that the pages turn a different color? Do you see the purple? The purple designates the MLA style book. Got me? The MLA style book. And you've got several pages here. Noticed on 753, there's your list of works cited. 752 up to 753 is the in-text citation. Then on 753, you have the works cited page, and then of course you have examples of how to do all of this. By the way, in your packet that I gave to you, you also have examples of this that I've provided for you, starting on page starting on page there's some suggestions on page 5, but page 6 and page 7, okay? And then what you're going to find starting on page 9 of your packet. On page 9 of your packet, you'll actually have an example model. We'll get to it in a moment. Notice on page 763, we then go to the APA style book. Do you see it? The APA style book. And even though you don't have to use it, I'm recommending that you at least look at it. So that way, if you end up with a prof who says, work with APA, you've got some idea of what you're doing. By the way, make a note to yourself. Both APA and MLA have online sites. Okay, MLA.com, APA.com, that allows you to be able to get full up-to-date, any kind of changes of the rules. I highly recommend that you hit them. Finally, starting on 772, that is page 9 of your packet. I copied it for you out of Axelrod Cooper so you can annotate it on your own, mark on it, or whatever. Notice at the end of this, on page 778, that's huge, you want to put a star next to it. That is what a works cited page looks like. Notice, first line is justified left, Second line indented. Do you see it? You're going to have alphabetical order, last name first. Do you see how that works? Okay? Okay? Any questions about any of this style book stuff? Now, starting then with the papers that are coming, we will expect that you kind of follow this flow, okay? This MLA approach through the style book. Questions, comments? All right, so now we'll begin the process of, kind of finishing.